Hello, listeners. My name is Professor Adontes Finch, and welcome to the Nightmare Trials.
I feel like I've been in survival mode for my whole life. I've always had to do whatever it takes to make ends meet. Just survive. I didn't have a great childhood. School didn't come easy to me, but I made it out and I made it to college. I was a server all through college. Customer service did come easily to me. It was flexible and quick money. But unfortunately, as everything else got more expensive, people started taking advantage of tipping not being a set price. Their bills, groceries, gas, and rent prices were all going up. And so were our menu prices. Now customers' meals cost more than they used to, and people have less money than they used to. I know people say that if you can't tip, then stay home, but sometimes grocery shopping and cooking a meal just seem harder than running a marathon. Either way, my ends were not meeting, and I needed more money while I finished my last semester of college. Some people do food delivery service because it was also quick, easy, and flexible, but my poor old car did not need any extra miles on it. A friend told me about an app called Task List. People on the app ask for help doing odd jobs, and then other people can accept those jobs based on their skills and availability. Someone may need their yard raked or their medicine picked up from the pharmacy. There were job listings for car washing, house cleaning, making Excel sheets, data entry, you name it. It was a nice way to make up the income on my own time and still be able to serve and go to class. One job I took was just to build a dresser that someone bought from IKEA. Another job was to pick up dead birds from a guy's backyard. I didn't ask why there were so many dead birds. I get paid all the same. The most jobs I took were for house cleaning. Usually moms that just need an extra hand while they take care of their kids. Laundry, dishes, bathroom, deep clean, whatever they struggled getting to the most. I was happy to help, and most jobs weren't any worse off than my own apartment. Which, ironically, I never clean because, no one's paying me to. With these jobs, you never know what the client's going to be like. It is a stranger hiring strangers, after all. Most of the cleaning jobs, people don't like to be around while I clean their house, but I had this one client who hired me for a house cleaning job, which I completed, and she asked me to come back. Except she offered to pay me less the second time. She said that she saw me drink some water out of their kitchen sink. I could not believe it. Other than being a little off, no one had ever been threatening, scary, or dangerous before. Unless you count Rufus the German Shepherd with talons for nails. He was very loving, but he sliced the hell out of my legs saying hello. I was just left bleeding in the kitchen trying to get Rufus to ease up on his affection. Even then, I was never in any danger, I guess. Until the last job I accepted. It was another cleaning job. The client said it would need to be her whole house, but I could work on it over time. She was an elderly lady named Susan. She called to talk about times and payment because she struggled with texting and using the app. I took the bus to her house because my poor old car was making some off-putting sounds. When I arrived at her house, I was glad to see that it seemed like a small enough job. Most likely a one-bedroom house, judging from the outside. Once I climbed onto her porch, however, I began to worry I might have bit off a little more than I could chew. The smell coming from inside the house seemed to seep through the siding. The adorable lavender-painted door could have easily had green fume clouds surrounding it. I thought about bailing when Susan opened the door. She was a stout and plump woman in her 50s or 60s. Very kind eyes behind her thick glasses, and short, wispy white hair was surrounding her face. She gestured for me to come in and to mind the mess, she chuckled. I had never seen so many items in one place before. I was standing in a 2-foot by 3-foot cleared spot on the floor in front of the door. Stacked almost to the ceiling were totes, boxes, papers, and magazines. Straight ahead was a Susan-sized path that led further into the house. She mentioned this being a big job, but not that she was a hoarder. I'd seen the Hoarder show before, and this house would have definitely made it on. Susan let me know that she'd lived in that house for 25 years. Her and her husband Ben had moved there after they got married, and he died 1 year ago. She hadn't been able to get anything done on her own. I walked down the cleared path that was littered with papers, mail, envelopes, fast food bags. There was a colorful array of stacked items from CDs to VHS tapes and cardboard boxes, both full and empty. I was able to look off to the left where there was a rocking chair in a sea of wrappers that was set just feet away from an old TV sitting on the floor. My great aunt had one of those large, boxy, heavy TVs. It has the knob that you turn the channels. More stacks of newspapers were behind the TV. It filled the tiny room. In between the stacks of newspapers were totes containing who knows what. Susan continued the tour on our trash brick road to the kitchen. The kitchen was ground zero for the smell. Upon walking into the room, we discovered a horde of flies, which now rose simultaneously and began their weaving dance around the room. Although walking in the kitchen was easier to see around the room, since the stacks were not as high, the stacks that were in there were, unfortunately, trash bags. Piles of white, black, and yellow trash bags created mountains and valleys of filth. The counters were filled with dishes, pots, and pans, all of which were covered in crusty, dried food. There were dozens of empty veggie and fruit cans sprinkled sporadically all around the bags. As I was taking it all in, Susan broke my trance as she warned me not to open the fridge. She said it broke about 6 months ago and it hasn't been opened since. I remember trying to keep my face stone cold, thinking about the still rotting food growing inside that fridge. My stomach lurched. As Susan showed me around, she mentioned that she hadn't cooked a meal since Ben died. I tried to stay focused on her sweet, kind eyes, and not the smell and not the gagging that I had to keep suppressing. I didn't want to judge her. I was in no place to understand where she was coming from, how it got this way, and why no one had been here to help her before. I also tried to remember the very large payment that I would earn and continue to earn as I completed this project. Just survive. Spin the plates, make ends meet. She let me know that there was a large dumpster on the back lot that I was able to use for the bulk of the trash. We then made our way to the bedroom, which was another small room. This one was hidden in heaping piles of clothes, laundry baskets, and a bed hiding away in the middle of it all. I remember noticing that there was one Susan-sized spot cleared out on the bed. I just can't imagine cuddling up on that small spot to try and sleep in this house. There was a door in the bedroom that I assumed went to the bathroom. This was the room I dreaded the most. Luckily, Susan told me that would not be a job for me. She said she could handle the small space, and it was a private area. Whatever karma or whoever's good graces I was in, I thanked all the gods for that. I decided to ask her why now, and how come she hadn't asked for help in the past. She just looked down at her feet and said that it was time. I heard the sadness in her voice, and I watched her go out the back door from the kitchen onto the porch. Susan told me that she would be watching the birds, and I could start wherever I wanted, or pick my poison, as she said it. Although I gave her a courtesy laugh, I'd imagined so many items in this house were actually toxic and poisonous. I decided to start in the kitchen since a lot of it was bagged up already. I masked up, gloved up, and put lip gloss in my nostrils, like MacGyver. The mask helped the flies not to get into my nose, but they seemed determined to get in my ears. I opened the windows and I propped open the back door to clear some out. I made what felt like a million trips to the dumpster, and I took out a total of 32 bags of trash from that kitchen. Some of the bags sloshed, some crunched, and some just broke open. I kept eyeing the fridge with actual fear of it popping open and some grotesque food monster of moldy, growing food crawling across the floor to devour me. I heard some rustling in one corner of the room that shook me from my thoughts. There were some wrappers and boxes piled about 3 foot tall, and at the bottom, some of those papers started wiggling, then stopped. Then they started again, and in a split second, a furry rodent had darted across the kitchen, dodging bag after bag until it made it under the fridge of death. Mice and rats don't scare me in their existence, but I don't want them in the house with me. I also know that when there's one rodent, there are more. I peeked out through the back window, looking out onto the porch, and there sat Susan, looking at the sky. I didn't want to pity her, but I did. She was lost and alone. I was glad she finally got help. I just wasn't sure yet if I was glad that help was me. It took over an hour to get most of the bags to the dumpster, and no more scurrying surprises. I needed to take a break from kitchen duty. I made my plan for the bedroom to bag up clothes and take out any totes onto the new floor space in the kitchen. The kitchen floor was still stained and needed swept and scrubbed and mopped, but there was at least walking room. I worked on bagging up the clothes in this small, musty bedroom and was surprised to find that most of the clothes appeared to be quote-unquote clean. No stains or sign of wear, just clothes in piles. It smelled like a thrift store. The air seemed to be a little thicker. I knew all the clothes would still need to be washed to get the smell out. I grabbed 2 full bags of clothes and walked out to the kitchen. I let out a scream when I did. The entire kitchen floor was covered with trash bags. White, black, and yellow trash bags full of all the old food and trash that I know I carried outside. It all just sat right there before me. Susan was standing in the back door asking me what was wrong. I couldn't quite get it out. I was still in shock. The bags, I told her. The bags are back. I already cleaned. She let me know not to panic and I could take all the time that I needed. It didn't make any sense, I know, but I didn't know how to explain it to her. She left me standing in the kitchen feeling lost and out of my depth. Then I heard a noise from behind me, a kind of muffled speaking noise. I checked on Susan, back sitting outside. I tentatively peeked back into the bedroom behind me, leaving the kitchen filth. I heard the muffled voice again. It sounded like someone was saying hello in a quiet and weak voice. I scanned the piles of clothes, looking for a radio or a TV. Seeing nothing, I called back. Hello? Is someone in here? I pinpointed the direction of the voice. It was coming from the bathroom. I hesitated, but only for a moment. My curiosity just took over me as I navigated through the piles to the bathroom door. I held my head up to the door and I heard an older male human voice that whispered, "Susan." The echoes of my heart beating and my breathing had to be so loud. I slowly raised my hand to the knob. Shaking, I grabbed the door handle and turned it. Feeling the cold metal knob in my hand, I inched open the door. The putrid odor was enough to knock someone out. It was sharp, disgusting smell that hit your entire body. I peered into the darkness of the bathroom and I slid my shaking hand along the wall, searching for a switch. I turned on one vanity bulb, leaving the room in a dim 40-watt blanket of light. Directly in front of my line of sight was the owner of the voice that I heard. He was the most decrepit creature I had ever seen. Slumped on top of the toilet was a man that had been dying for years, or had been dead for years. It was hard to tell. His skin was a thick, leathery sheet draped across his protruding cheekbones. His eyeballs were so sunken in that his head resembled more of a skull than a head. His jaw moved up and down as he tried to mouth the words without lips, skin, and a tongue needed to do so. A slight recognition flashed in his eyes that I was not Susan. He tried to lift his arm, but his hand stayed rested on his leg. He just moved one bony index finger to point towards the door. I needed no further instructions. I turned around and bolted out of that doorway. As I turned around to escape the room, I tripped over a pile of clothes at my feet. I landed on the clear path made for walking from the door to the bed, my face flat on the ground. I opened my eyes to a face staring back at me. It was a woman whose face was frozen in fear. She was surrounded by trash and clothes packed under the bed with her. Only her face remained free of the filth, and she just stared at me until suddenly she yelled, "Run!" I pushed up from the ground and jumped to my feet. I headed towards the door of the room. As I took each step, the trash seemed to pool up around my ankles like a flood. I made it to the kitchen in the sea of trash bags. They began to swell up, taking up more and more room. The bags began to engulf me up to my waist. I was wading through bags, using my arms to pull on the trash bags, moving up towards my body. The bags ripped and spilled out old food, sticky bits, and chunky liquid all over my arms. I could feel myself sinking into the depths of the garbage. The last image I saw when I was able to move any part of my body was Susan in the doorway. Her kind eyes looked so sad as she watched me sink down. I tried calling out to her, but the bags covered my head and buried me. That was a few weeks or maybe months ago now. I'm not quite sure. I have no way to monitor time. That really isn't a part of my world anymore. Time, jobs, money, they were all becoming distant constructs in my mind. I remember being consumed by them before. Now I'm here. I'm a part of this, whatever this was. I can feel myself withering each day, knowing I will end up like Susan's husband one day. I wonder about the girl under the bed sometimes. I also wonder what other friends this house holds. A cleaner came to visit a while back. That was nice. Having another friend always seemed to help. I can't see, hear, or talk to them, but I can feel them. We are a part of a system now. I heard another scream coming from the living room. Then she was silent. I wasn't really sad about it. All of my anger and fear and sadness drained away after a while. I have no worries, no responsibilities, just existing. Until I assume I will no longer exist one day. I guess I finally found a way to just survive.
Thank you for listening. If you would like to have an extra bonus episode a month and access to the interdimensional radio station, subscribe to the Nightmare Trials either on Spotify or on Patreon. For the Patreon subscribers, you will need to type in patreon.com/the Nightmare Trials. The cost for the subscription is only $5 per month, and your contribution helps us continue with creating quality content. Further, make your way to Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram to add the Nightmare Trials to your socials. We like to do giveaways, post short video content,